I want to bring in Bill Richardson now. He is the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, and he has negotiated with the North Koreans in the past. Ambassador Richardson, thank you so much for joining us here on CNN. Now, expectations, as you know, for this summit to take place tomorrow at the DMZ are so high. But realistically, what do you think is going to come out of tomorrow's meeting?
Well, I think it's an important meeting because South Korea has paved the way for this diplomacy with North Korea and the United States, and also South Korea, because South Korea is the most vulnerable to a North Korean attack. There's 25 million people from South Korea and Seoul area vulnerable to an artillery, conventional weapons attack. So it's important. I think what we'll find out at this summit, besides the positive images, which are good in diffusing tensions, is exactly what does North Korea mean about denuclearization. They say it's on the table, but my view is that they are ready to freeze their weapons, not necessarily eliminate them. And secondly, the degree of international verification and inspections that North Korea is ready to accept. Nonetheless, I think there's some human rights initiatives, people-to-people, family reunification issues that could be discussed that will ease the tension between the two Koreas. It's not just the United States and North Korea. It's South Korea, it's Japan that is already nervous that it's being left out, and the big player that has to keep enforcing the sanctions, and that is China.
And if there is a pledge that is delivered tomorrow after this meeting for denuclearization, as you said, we need to hash out the definition. What does it mean according to the North Koreans? But what needs to happen to turn that pledge into something more concrete? Is it all about, as you suggested a moment ago, verification?
Yeah, there has to be verification. There has to be inspection, because the North Koreans have a lot of sites that are hidden. They have to give access to international inspectors. They haven't done that in the past. They just did it with the Yongbyon facility, and that caused the agreements with the United States in the past not to happen or to be violated. So I think what is also, I don't think the North Koreans are going to be very explicit about denuclearization. They don't want to say we're not going to denuclearize, because then President Trump may say, well, then I'm not going. I think they're going to keep it vague. But I think the North Koreans are also going to try to drive a little wedge between us and the South Koreans and say to the South Koreans, look, we're talking diplomacy. You got to help us with international sanctions, lower them, maybe get some pledges of South Korean investment, human rights initiatives with North Korea, trade concessions. You know, the North Koreans, they have their set agenda. And my hope, Kristie, is that the United States, that we have a sensible, common sense strategy, long range, to make this summit work. It's just not going to be a photo op, President Trump and Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, absolutely. And well before tomorrow's summit and this week, you wrote an op-ed saying that, you know, even if there's no pledge for denuclearization that's announced by the North Koreans, that Donald Trump should still go ahead with this planned meeting with Kim Jong-un. Walk us through the reasons why.
Well, because any kind of easing of tension is important. First, if we get, for instance, a pledge that North Korea will not ship chemical weapons to Syria, that's good. Exports of nuclear and missile materials to countries like Pakistan, other world pariahs. But also, I think a pledge to find with verification a freeze on their nuclear and missile activities, particularly those that might hit the United States and other parts of the region, not Japan. That is positive. But maybe a long-range denuclearization strategy makes sense. I want the U.S. to pursue denuclearization. I just don't think the North Koreans are going to be prepared to do that. If they do, it's going to come at a very high price. If you think the Marshall Plan after World War II was expensive, wait till you see what the North Koreans asked for.
Wow, and what should we expect? And what should Donald Trump expect? I mean, he fancies himself as the ultimate deal maker. You have dealt with North Koreans. What is the reality when you're sitting down at the table across from North Korean negotiators? What should Donald Trump and his team be ready for when they sit down with Kim Jong-un?
Well, I don't think, you know, with the North Koreans, you don't make deals sitting across the table negotiating back and forth. It'll be mainly prepared statements. It's the informal talks with the North Koreans when they go for either a meal or a walk that's when the North Koreans make a deal. And I think the president needs to be conscious of that, but also know where he wants to end up. My view is that he took a gamble in this meeting with North Korea. It was the right gamble. But let's not raise expectations and say they're going to denuclearize at the first meeting. They're not going to do that. These guys, they're slick, you know, they're unpredictable, but they're relentless. They have an agenda. And I think Kim Jong-un has shown he's now the diplomatic star of the world after being unpredictable and, you know, a pariah. He's now, everybody's courting him, the Chinese, the South Koreans, the international community. But he's up to something, so we have to be careful, and we should be prepared. Not just the United States, but the international community, South Korea, Japan, and I think also the European Union, which has a lot at stake here, too.
Yeah, from international pariah, Kim Jong-un, as you put it, is now the diplomatic star of the world. And the international community have got to be prepared with what he's up to. Ambassador Bill Richardson, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insight on CNN. Take care.